Hey guys, I wanted to do a quick video on the 7 basic maneuver attacks, classic attacks that are found on the battlefield. Now some of these are applicable and some of them won't be, but I'm going to go through all of them. Some of them you've heard before and some of them you might not have. The first one is called the penetration of the center. It's a fairly simple attack. It's usually used when the right and the left flanks are protected, for example by a natural, maybe a mountain and a river. What you do is you send secondary units to the left and right wing. What happens is the enemy splits his forces up. You keep secondary reserves back here to basically push down the center. Very simple. There is the single envelopment, and that's the next most common. Obviously, I've shown it before. It's a fairly simple attack that basically you send units around to the single flank. And then, of course, the double envelopment, which is basically sending units around to both sides. Now, you've got to have superior forces with a double envelopment because it opens you up. It's very risky, and there's a possibility of overextension, and you open yourself up to a counterattack. All right, and I'll try and put a link in the box because I know that I've done a double envelopment video. An oblique attack. Oblique attack is all based on superior strength. You do not do an oblique attack unless you absolutely have superior forces. What happens is secondary units pin the line down, and then you send your strength off to one wing, and you basically hit really hard over here. The oblique attack is to lure, or excuse me, the secondary is basically to lure the commander, to get him to lure reserves and apply them over here so that you can come in from a flank or his wing. The next one is a feigned withdrawal. Okay, so a feigned withdrawal is used generally for ambushes and surprises. We all have seen the Red Dawn where you've got one unit out and you basically get the forces to attack, and then you're basically, the enemy is moved into an ambush or basically a surprise. So that's a feigned withdrawal. Now you've got to be very careful. You've got to be very cautious, because if you're caught, in a bad position, you will actually be retreating. It won't be a feigned withdrawal. You'll actually be withdrawing, and more than likely to your detriment. Now this one is really applicable for most people. It's called the attack from a defensive position. This is similar to a feigned withdrawal, but not the same. What you do is you choose some well-defended positions and to lure the enemy in. And what you do is you then withdraw to a secondary position, let's say over here, so that the enemy comes into a well-defended position, which then gives you the ability to attack from a flank, for example. Now, this is similar to the feigned withdrawal, with the exception of, obviously, you have well-entrenched defensive positions. Now, the risk with this one is that you don't want to become dependent on your defensive positions, and I want to encourage you. This is the one that you're more than likely going to be in. You're going to have a strong defensive position, but you want to think about in terms of if someone were to approach you, to be able to have a secondary attack with your reserves, and you want to be able to give up and escape and evade from these defensive positions. This means that the enemy would be applying more forces to that defensive position because he sees your defensive line and the work that you've done. The last one is called the indirect. Now, an indirect is for speed, surprise, superior forces, and timing. It is the most complex of all of them, and it requires a lot of skill and, quite frankly, luck a lot of times. What this does is it forces the enemy to decisively act. What this does, your objective is to do a full frontal attack. Enemy comes in, and you go around and you cut him off from his supply lines. You're feigning with a smaller force. He engages, and you basically, now this is not like an envelop, you're not going to attack his flanks. Your objective is to cut off the supply lines so that if he was to then retreat, then you've got him completely surrounded, obviously from the rear. Now, this has been used on a flank. A lot of this stuff has to do with natural obstacles, where they lie, where they're not, how accessible are you on the field of battle. So those are the 7 basic attacks. Again, it's penetration of the center, envelopment of a single flank, a double envelopment, oblique attack, a feigned withdrawal, attack from a defensive position, and an indirect attack. So I'll try and find a link that has a pretty comprehensive examples of all of these as well. If I can, I'll at least find a link for each of them. So let me know what you think.